With Meg. I'm Meg. Hey, so a couple of things. First of all, it's not Monday. I believe it's Saturday, Saturday, and we are in Puerto Rico at the ABCUSA Mission Summit. And it's still morning, this morning. I have these two lovely and quite hilarious ladies joining me. Secret talents you didn't know our Judson Press authors had. They're pretty hilarious. You can, maybe we'll see your future book, your joke book or something in stores. Yeah, there you go. Judson Press starts a comedy line starring Marsha and Katie. I'd buy the book. Anyway, comedy act. Yeah, there you go. So this is how this thing goes, is we just talk and we laugh, and it's great. So for people who don't know, I mean, where have they been? I guess they would have to be brand new, right? Who don't know who you are, would you introduce yourselves? Tell people a little bit about you. You brought your lovely books with you.
So I'm Marsha Patton. I've been with Meg before. I'm Executive Minister Emerita of Evergreen Association of American Baptist Churches. That's one of my hats. I live in Kent, Washington. That's Washington State. That's not Kent near Washington, D.C.
Is there a Kent near Washington, D.C.?
I don't know, but
it would be interesting.
But I know that when you say Washington, people stop listening and just think D.C. So you have to say state really quick.
Yes.
In order to
got that
out of the
It's like living in New York. People assume that you live in New York City.
Right. Yes.
You have to quickly say upstate New York.
Yeah. So, same thing. Katie.
Okay. I'm Katie Choi Wong, and I am a retired minister. Had many hats, but my recent ministry was as a senior pastor of a church in Castro Valley, California. I live in San Francisco, and I wrote a book. That's why I'm here.
You wrote a book. So you're holding your beautiful, lovely book, Building Lasting Bridges.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Marsha's wrote several, right? Your most recent.
Well, my most recent book is Sacred Decisions that I wrote with this is redundant statement, my Quaker friend, Nora Percival.
I get that. Your Quaker friend. I like that. Yeah. So your most recent one, Sacred Decisions. Okay. So for people who don't know, since you're holding the mic, I mean, we had a whole conversation about Marsha and holding the mic earlier, but so what's the book?
Oh, this book is the subtitle is Consensus in Faith Communities. So specific, it's sort of a Robert's Rules of Order for doing consensus. It's a really how to do it book. We have some vignettes in there to provide some interest, but it's really outlines very carefully what a facilitator. We use the word facilitator because some churches use the word moderator, some faith use clerk, and some use something else. And we thought if we use any one of those, we've lost an audience, so we're just going to call it a facilitator. But a real handbook of how to do consensus and the justification for it, that over and against majority rule, consensus does at least two things. Includes every voice. It's just a more just way to do decision making than majority rule. Where Baptists in particular can start using Robert's Rules of Order as the Bible in their meetings and thus leave God out of consensus. And for us, it's a lot easier in consensus to keep God in the decision-making process. So those two things, of every voice and keeping God in the decision-making process.
I think those are really important words, the inclusion and the just. Those are incredibly, I mean, to me especially, but I think for everybody, those
Yeah.
are just
Yeah.
incredibly important.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like, why haven't we always used consensus? But then, we're not Quaker anymore. So
Right.
probably part of the reason why. But I really think we need to move back to that, and we recommend use consensus while you don't have a heavy decision to make, so that when you've got a heavy decision to make, it's natural to use consensus, and you've had practice in how to do it. Yeah.
I think that's some really great advice. I mean, to practice when it's not, hi, this is
When it's not important.
everything's on the table. Let's try this new thing. Let's not.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder to do then. The other thing is, don't ever think that you can start one way and the other, because that doesn't work.
So consensus allows for some evolution, right?
Well, the more you practice it, the more adept you come and discover So one of the advantages I see in consensus over and against using Robert's rules is that with Robert's rules of order, you put the solution and vote the solution up or down. If you're doing consensus well, you put the question on the table, the issue on the table. What does God want us to do about the color of carpet? Not, let's make it red, right? But what does God want us to do about the carpet that we have now? It's a whole different question.
Right.
A whole different, provides, somebody may say, carpet's the wrong idea. We need to have linoleum floor or hardwood vinyl floor or something entirely different, because wheelchairs are easier to run on. I mean, there could be all kinds of reasons, but what I'm saying is that rather than offering solutions, you offer the issue. We've got holes in our rug and it needs to be replaced.
Yeah.
What does God want us to do about this? So you can even put God into the question from the beginning. So now it's not about my particular choice of color. It's got to be green, by the way. But, but it forces me to say, how would God want me to consider this? It's not about my personal color choice or something. Forces me to do the thinking, the praying about the issue, and the connecting with God on the issue.
Does the carpet need to be green because it matches your glasses? Because it's your favorite color, or it's just right?
No, green is just a good color.
Okay. Just wondering. I grew up in a church with green carpets. So
that's different because most of them are red.
No, yeah, and I think a lot of us who have served as pastors have had the great carpet argument,
or the color on the wall, or the color of the church. I mean, we get so lost in the details and forget to ask, what does God really want us to do? And God may be saying, don't worry about this.
Right.
There's more important things to be concerned about if we're all got our mind on what God would want instead of what
God says. I don't care.
It's all about me.
I don't care about the carpet.
Yeah, the Quakers say that they should go into a meeting for business, a worship for business, ready to have their minds changed.
Oh, that's nice.
Ready to have your minds changed. And I once had a Baptist say, well, does that mean I have to be ready to take the other side? And I said, we didn't say change to the other side. We just said ready to have your minds changed.
I like that.
And that change in my book is change to what God would have us to do.
Maybe we all need Quaker friends, I think. I mean,
that's
redundant.
That's part of what I'm advocating is that
I think it's great.
We should all go into meetings ready to ask, what's God want us to do about this?
Yeah.
Sorry I feel like I'm dominating.
That's okay. Well, so, Katie, what about your book? Let's talk about your book.
Okay, my book is Building Lasting Bridges, and it's an updated handbook on intercultural ministries. I wrote a small little handbook in the 90s, and this is an updated version of it. It's actually a very expanded version. It is. I wrote it with two colleagues of mine, United Methodist ministers. One is an African American pastor. The other one is a 80-year-old woman who has a PhD in cultural anthropology. All the three of us have done intercultural ministries for over 25 years, and teaching and doing consulting and training with pastors, church leaders, and church congregations on becoming intercultural and interculturally sensitive to their own congregations, but even to their communities, how we can be really see the diversity that God has offered all of us, and to be able to minister in that kind of a setting and not be afraid of it. So a lot of the book is starts out with really doing a lot of our inner work, trying to understand how we are all cultural beings, ethnocentric, and how that has impacted how we look at ourselves, as well as how we look at others, and especially others who are different from us. So then once we recognize that, well, how do we see other people? We can discover, and learn from the others what it means in their culture, and then to begin to respect and appreciate each other's differences and diversity. So that is a handbook. So it's very hands-on, lots of exercises and experience resources that churches can use for Bible studies, for small groups, retreats, and so forth. And then the neat thing about it, because we had so much material for 25 years, is that we also have an online workbook that goes with this, that's downloadable on Judson Press, and it's free.
Okay, so for those watching or those here, we'll go to if you go to Ministry Mondays with Meg, I'll put a link so that you can go to the workbook to Judson Press and download that if you'd like. That would be fantastic. So I'm assuming that in 25 years, a lot has changed, right? I mean,
oh yes. I mean, when I first started I shared my story last couple of days with different groups, but when I first started, how I became more intercultural is that I grew up in a predominantly Black community in elementary school up to 5th grade, and then my parents bought a house, and then I grew up in an Italian town. And so I've always had this perspective of other cultures, and then how it played into my lives and my own identity. And then I have my home church is First Chinese Baptist in San Francisco. And there's some fans here.
Yeah, the cheerleading section. Yeah.
So I have the Asian experience. So I've been in multicultural experience my entire life. But what was missing was in my education, in the social media, on television, on movies, is I didn't see that. There was no multiculturalism, and yet that was my reality. So I felt very passionate about we really need to be more open to it, because that's the world. Yeah. And we are a global community. I mean, there's just in our communities there's diversity there. So how do we deal with diversity? We can see that as God's gift, rather than, oh no, we lost who we were before, but it's God's gift, and God's gift is it's always beautiful. So how can we capitalize on that and learn from each other, grow in our faith with each other cross-culturally, and appreciate each other, and then what we call build a beloved community. And that's what, so it has changed in the sense that now you see more diversity. You see it in social media, you see it on television, you see it in movies. It's becoming more embraced. You see the changes in demographics in the United States. And some states like California, majority is people of color. Hawaii is another one. New Mexico is becoming that way. So there are some communities where the changing demographics has also affected how we see ourselves and how our churches see themselves too, and their ministries.
So is this a guidebook for like a church that's like, we want to become more diverse, we want to engage in intercultural ministries, and we just don't know how to do it. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. It's
Okay.
it's a really handbook. So it's not an academic book. It's a practical, hands-on. A lot of the resources and exercise in it are reproducible, and you can use it in your studies to help the churches figure out how they might become more diverse. And even if their communities are not that diverse, sometimes churches are a predominantly one type of culture, they can still build relationships with other churches that are of a different culture. And I think the beauty of that is that that's really what God wants.
Yeah.
Is for all of us to know that we're all made in God's image, even though we all look different and we all speak different languages or we all come from different cultures, that God made us as one humanity. And how can we help each other and help each other's communities to become what God wants us to be?
I love the beloved community. I love that phrase. Just thinking as the church, as the kingdom of the beloved community, and even like through consensus to go that using this, the point is that people are being heard and have a voice, and it makes us all a part of that. A part of that beloved community. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I love this. See, this is why I love doing this is just seeing all the connections and all the ways that really we may look different. We may, our ideology may be a little or very different, but there's a place for all of us in this thing called the beloved community. Oh.
And I think especially in these times where you hear a lot about polarization and so forth, it doesn't have to be that way. It does not have to be that way. And especially if we're Christians, we have a faith that should unite us. And even though we may differ, we can still appreciate each other and we can still care for each other. And so that's really what the book is about, I think. Yeah.
So I'm thinking, this is just off the top of my head. So both of you have served as pastors and in leadership roles. What advice would you give to somebody just starting off in ministry? I know that's a big one, but run. I know. Marsha's like
Passing a buck here.
Right.
I think when you start off in ministry is to listen and observe. I mean, I think when we kind of seminary, we're all excited, we're passionate, we got this call from God, and we want to do so many great things for God. We forget that the people in the pew, the congregation, they have experience too, and they have faith, and they have a long, probably many years of faith that they have lived through. So we can learn from them, and I think that, especially when you first start, you have great ideas, but don't do it right away. Get to know the people, build your relationship, build trust, because, and that's the same in intercultural ministries. You may be gung-ho and say, well, we want to minister to this group of people who just moved into our community, but and so you get gung-ho and you don't really listen and learn from that, and you don't build a relationship. So once you build a relationship, a trust relationship, then you can really begin to appreciate each other more deeply. And that's why the word building lasting relationship is in there, because that's what we're talking about, not superficial relationships, but lasting relationships.
Thank you. I think that's great. Absolute advice is listen first.
Yeah.
I do think you're right about people getting out of seminary and you think, oh, I've learned all this great stuff and let me just dump it on somebody else.
Right.
Yeah. And you'll find by listening first that you can then take what you have learned and put it into their context so that they can hear what you have better than if you just dump on them. And to realize it's a journey that you're entering in together, and need to find where the journeys match and where you have an opportunity to experience something even new with the people you're doing your ministry and work with. And some people are easier to work with than others.
Yeah.
And to not blame yourself when you find somebody hard to work with, but to give them grace and yourself grace too. Yeah.
This is great. This is great. So, as we kind of wrap this up, we come to my favorite question, the joy question. And I know, Marcia, so for those watching, those out here, if you missed our first episode, you can go just Google Ministry Mondays with Meg. You got to put the with Meg on there. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Spotify and iTunes, and you can find us there, listen to us. We had a lot of fun. And so if you want, you can give the same answer. But so what brings you joy?
Well, I think my answer was, but because what brings me joy is seeing somebody else get it. Whether it's teaching somebody to fly a kite or teaching somebody something else, when you see the light in their eyes and you see that they've gotten the concept and are ready to run with it, that just fills me with joy. And sometimes it's because I've done it well, and sometimes it's just because God is gracious and they heard it. But seeing somebody get it, that just really brings me joy.
What brings me joy is Jesus.
I knew she was going to do that.
Well, yeah, Jesus does bring me joy. But I think also for me, what brings me joy is seeing, both of us are retired now. So seeing the next group of younger people come up and carry out the work even beyond your wildest dreams. And what you left behind is a seed that was planted, and a seed that the next generation go into ministry, pastor, or all the other different ministries, chaplaincy, missionary work, whatever, in community work, and seeing them really thrive. I think that brings me joy. It's like, okay, my job is done. Now it's the next generation. And someone said, well, when you retire, do you have now a lot of free time? So actually, for a minister, the job is really never done.
Right. We just die. I mean,
something else.
Right.
But it's nice to see the next generation kind of take over, and new people. And when I came here, I said, I don't recognize a lot of people now. And that's great. That's great, because if I do, I mean, it's the same people.
It's the same people.
So that's what churches need to do. They need to say, when I come to church, I don't know a lot of people in the pews anymore. The new people. So
yeah, that's beautiful. I'm grateful for you both and for your ministries and the laughter that you bring to this place. If you have a chance to hang out with these ladies, they're pretty hilarious. I'm just gonna say, if you're here, make sure that you pick up a book. If you're watching, you can go to judsonpress.com and buy their books. And again, I'm just thank you so much for being a part of this, and thanks everybody for watching.
Thank you, Meg.